Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you are joining us today. I am very excited to introduce our special guest, Dr. Beth McDougall. Dr. Beth has been in practice since 1998 and is an internationally recognized integrative physician with a specialty in multifactorial degenerative disease. She is founder of Clear Center and a co-founder and medical director of the Biooptimization Jizen Labs in Mill Valley, California. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
I'm so excited about this conversation with you. You're doing some really cool things in medicine. Gosh, you've been practicing for quite a couple decades now.
Yeah, 25 years almost.
Wow. And I'm very fascinated about your recent book that you published. And I thought that would be a great entry into this conversation. And your book is titled The Pristine Blueprint. Can you tell us what our pristine blueprint is and how we access it?
Yeah. So as you probably know, our bodies are exceedingly complex. There's 37 trillion cells, each with millions of atoms and millions of chemical reactions happening every second in a coordinated manner. And how is that possible? And then I've always been really interested in embryological development. I used to work in a lab in Minnesota in cellular biology, and in looking at embryological development, and I never appreciated the explanations I was getting from reading science or from talking with my mentors about how an embryo is actually developing, because it's such an interesting process. And I really got interested at that time in the concept of morphogenic fields. And then as I graduated from medical school and started working with complex patients, I realized that there was something else orchestrating our physiology than met the eye, because it was just so beautifully, exquisitely coordinated and complex. And so I started thinking about this concept of when we are conceived, when the sperm penetrates the egg. Recent science has documented that there's a flash of light and actually a sound that occurs. And my sense is that imprints in the kind of fluid matrix of the unified field a blueprint, like a three-dimensional geometrical blueprint that can kind of guide this development of an embryo, and kind of what cell layer lays down next to what cell layer lays down, and what differentiates into this structure and differentiates into this structure. You really dig into the details. It's not so obviously controlled just by the DNA, because there's some higher level of orchestration that's telling the DNA, which genes turn on and off. So I kind of conceived of this three-dimensional blueprint that has all of the operating instructions for our exquisitely complex physiology. And later in my career, I really dove into studying physics and kind of physics of the unified field, and really came to understand that we exist within this field of energy and information, and space is not empty. We not only exist within it, but it exists within us, and we're derived from this beautiful field, as is everything else in our material world. And so and then the other cool thing I learned as I was studying physics is that nothing is static. Actually, all physical matter, and our bodies included, are forming and annihilating trillions of times a second. And if that is true, how is that we, these complex multicellular organisms, are forming and disappearing trillions of times a second? Meanwhile, our entire physiology is being so beautifully orchestrated. And so how is that dictating the level of our health, and how does our health become compromised? So that's the subject matter of the Pristine Blueprint book.
That's really cool. But how do we access it? I mean, and you talk about it as a three-dimensional, isn't it like multi-dimensional when we talk about the unified field?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so too. Yeah, it's not just three-dimensional, but how do we access it? I'd say one way is in deep meditation. I mean, we're in constant communication with this blueprint all the time. And then there are things that we encounter in life that can begin to disrupt the communication with this blueprint. Kind of like the energetic signatures of traumas, the energetic signatures of toxins and infections and things like that can reverberate in the field and begin to disrupt this kind of seamless translation, the kind of fidelity of the coding of the blueprint. And so my sense is that, from a trauma standpoint, at least, in meditation, we can really start to explore our energetic anatomy and kind of come to become aware of what our unique signature is and what is kind of like the beautiful subtle notes of the orchestra that is us. And then when there is interference patterns, when there's some chaos or some musicians playing out of tune, so to speak. And then when you can identify that in meditation, you may be able to tune into that and kind of understand why it's there, what it's there to teach you, and then learn how to ground that off.
So many questions are coming through here. So what about like our ancestral lineage? I mean, that must be part of our pristine blueprint too, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
past lives, whatever we want to call them, that we're coming from some lineage and our soul has chosen to come into a human form again. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, I think there's so many influences to our pristine blueprint. I feel like our ancestral lines are really imprinted into the kind of the energetics of the egg and the sperm when they come together. Everything that's ever happened to us, and then everything that happened to our parents and their parents and their parents is just like, kind of got an energetic signature associated with it, and the sperm and egg contain those. So then they come in, and then you have this collective signature. And so absolutely that's going to influence the imprint of the blueprint. And so in our personal healing work that we do, I think accessing ancestral information and clearing ancestral traumas and things like that is extremely vital. And I do a lot of work like that with patients.
That's incredible. As a medical doctor, can only imagine your training. And here you are, I mean, at the forefront of a emerging field of medicine. I mean, this is change as we speak, right? This is shifting the way we look at health. You don't just end up with, pancreatic cancer, or things are just not so random, right? That the choices that we make throughout our life and how it sounds like what you're sharing is we have as we choose a beautiful, harmonious relationship with this blueprint, we can manifest, we can allow health to have vitality and to live a regenerative lifestyle.
Right. Absolutely. Because the more we clear the dissonance out of our system and the static and interference, the more seamless the translation is between the blueprint and our physiology. And we live in this field that's infinitely abundant with information and with energy. And so when we have this seamless translation with our blueprint, we have flow of the energy from the field into our system to kind of maintain our physiology at a high functioning level. And when that flow of energy is compromised, that's when we start to have entropy, aging, and disease. And it may be compromised in a certain area more than others. You may have, let's say, a retained trauma that or like unmetabolized emotions related to a trauma that you've really held in a certain area of your body, and it's creating dissonance and really disrupting the flow of energy from the field in that area particularly. Or you may have the misinformation of a toxin that's really affecting how, kind of how the epigenetics of an area of your body. So yes, whether it's a toxin, an infection, a trauma, these things can create dissonance in the body and ultimately lead to disease.
And it can be so overwhelming, right? When a patient comes in and has breast cancer, has some type of cognitive decline, it's like all the steps, right? Are can be like, where do we start? Is it heavy metals? Do I have some chronic, a parasite, yeast overgrowth? So how do you, what's your entry, Dr. McDougall, as you work with a new patient to really, go right into kind of, this seems like metaphysical or kind of woo. And what's your entry? How do you start with a patient? And for anyone listening that's dealing with a acute or chronic condition, so they can hear your pathway or your way of taking somebody from a diagnosis that can be quite scary to, hey, this is what's possible for you.
Oh, that's such a good question. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, I would say most often I enter on the physical level. So I'm a medical doctor, someone's coming here because they have a medical problem, a physical issue for the most part. And so usually I'll first I spend like a good hour with someone and really kind of with a fine-tooth comb going over their medical history, their lifestyle, their in even childhood history and where they lived and what kind of environmental exposures they may have had, what kind of occupational exposures they may have had. And I kind of delve into relationships and, are they happy in their relationships? And I get a sense about, I just kind of intuit like what's really kind of at play here. But I do a lot, I'm known as a medical detective. So I do a lot of investigation, first and foremost on the physical level. So I do a lot of testing for hormone balance. That's like a great entry point because balancing hormones allows almost like a platform to work from if you have to treat an infection or detox some heavy metals or other types of toxins. If you have like a healthy kind of hormonal foundation that allows you to weather the stress of that much better. So that's a good entry point. But then I'm usually assessing, does it seem like they have heavy metals? Does it seem like they've had a lot of pesticide exposure? Do they have dysbiosis in the gut, like, imbalances in the microbiome there? Do they seem like they might have a systemic infection with a tick-borne disease or reactivated virus? Do they have emotional trauma? So I kind of like get a sense about that. And once I've established some rapport, then I may start delving into those areas. But yes, I do a lot of kind of work on the physical first, almost in a way to establish the rapport and kind of remove some of the kind of low-hanging fruit layers of dissonance so that a person can start to feel a little bit better. And then they may have the wherewithal to kind of like delve into kind of the deeper levels underlying that. Actually, but once in a great while, someone will be here and I'll just find myself like diving right into that. Like it's unusual, but it does happen where I know I'm led, like I know that's what the person's here to talk about. And there's tears, there's like, there's like some sort of profound feedback that like, yes, this is where the money is, so to speak. Like this is where we're going to get to the root of things quickly. And, I might do some work with them one-on-one, or I might refer them to, like, I have this incredible resource here in the Bay Area called the Academy of Intuition Medicine. And it's about a 1.5 year program that people can start. They can enter in with like 6 weeks introductory courses where they're learning how to meditate and they're exploring their own energetic anatomy, their chakras, their auric field, their different energetic pathways in the body, and really kind of learning, like I was saying, kind of their unique signature so that they can kind of, in contrast to that, figure out like what's foreign in the system that needs to be kind of looked at and examined and possibly let go of.
It's beautiful. What I'm really feeling as you're sharing is your compassion, your deep compassion for people and your intuitive abilities, natural abilities, because that's so much a part of that doctor-patient relationship, right? And it's like you're not separate from them. You're tuning into their whole biofield. And I think that is such a gift, and it's great to see it that more doctors are training in this and seeing that we're so much more than what our blood tests reveal. We're so much more, that there's there's a lot more detective work that to be done. So I'm just curious, like some of your other energy medicine diagnostic tools other than what's common MRIs, what when you work in resident medicine, or what are some of the other diagnostic tools that you use to assess what's really going on deep within someone's biology, chemistry, and biofield?
Yeah, great question again. Yeah, so I'm just going to preface it by saying, like, in addition to blood work and possibly stool testing and maybe provoked urine excretion tests for heavy metals and those kind of things, I will, in complex cases, do energetic testing on people. And this has been a literal game changer. I do bioresonance analysis of health testing, which is where I use an instrument called a Lecker antenna, and it's kind of a yes or no device, but a very sensitive one. It's a little more sensitive than just kind of regular kinesiology testing, a lot more sensitive, I think. And then I go through an algorithm of questions with the person holding, this mass that's connected to the device, and I'm asking, again, just kind of like, what's their level of toxicity? Are there heavy metals? Is there emotional stress? Is there psychic stress? Is there even are they living in a home with geopathic stress? Do they have sensitivity to electromagnetic fields? Are they experiencing any heavy metals? Are they experiencing any infections? And if so, if I get a yes on that, is it a bacterial infection, a viral infection, a parasitic infection, or a fungal infection? Then if I get a yes there, I'm like drilling down in there into like, okay, well, is it mold or is it candida? Is it like colonizing the sinuses or is it in the gut? Like, is it, so I can kind of get yes, no's, yes, no's, yes, no's. And then I can kind of learn, do they have like a dental cavitation? Do they have a disturbance foci? Is this more on a psychic level? Is this related to past emotional trauma? And you can kind of not only understand the underlying kind of terrain of issues, but that's why I do multifactorial disease conditions, but you can then ask the body, okay, so if these things are at play, in what order can we approach them and how? Because you have like 30 ways of approaching candida. I can 5 ways of doing heavy metals. I can do, infection treatment in a myriad of ways. So what is this body calling for? So then I'm asking body, like, do you want oxidative therapies? How about, herbs? Is it pharmaceuticals? Is it, and then I'm drilling down not only into like what herbs, what dosing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that has literally allowed me to unravel and unwind the most complex medical conditions. And when I began doing that, it just was like a quantum leap in my practice. And it's a little odd because I'm an internist by training, and I'm waving this little device, with the person present. And I remember learning it. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. That just looks so non-doctor like, and then I realized it's like, yeah, this is just one piece of information. So a lot of times if it'll come up where like someone has a dental cavitation, I won't just stop there. I will send them to the biological dentist and do a 3-dimensional CAT scan and then have someone read it. And sure enough, I will kind of dovetail those data streams. Like, yes, they have one. Or if they show up with like dysbiosis, I'll probably run a stool test. Or if they have the signature of something else, I'll test for that. So I usually kind of like, and over a decade of doing that, I've really come to trust it.
Mhm. I love that you've talked about how you've integrated energy medicine and these incredible tools out there. The one that you are using, we're using the Alpha Mega Scan that's from Russia. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. The biofeedback as a skio machine.
Yeah.
So the same thing, I've been in practice for 30 years now, but it's really wonderful when you have a tool like that in an hour that you're getting to see what's moving in the arteries of the brain. And like you're saying, like the dental is so huge. People with root canals that are infected. I mean, that it's really, really important, like for everyone listening, like it's so good to work with someone like Beth, Dr. Beth, and integrative practitioners that will really look at the whole picture in what is going on with you. And this sounds like what you're calling the future of medicine, right?
We have a device that's similar to yours as well. We do a lot of resonance biofeedback work where we are hooking people up to electrodes, and then we have a device that's reading signatures of different pathogens and toxins and even kind of disease cells and cancer cells and things like that. And then through a scalar device and a plasma device or an ultrasound probe, we can send back corrective frequencies and then measure again and then send back corrective frequencies. So it's this process of resonance biofeedback. And a lot of times that will be a super beautiful add-on to other things we're doing. So if we have someone in here who is doing a series of ozone IVs with occasion, every third one, ultraviolet blood, and then they're on some herbs for infections, and they're on some hormonal support, and they're taking advantage of some of our technologies, which we can get into, and then they're doing that resonance biofeedback, which is just
so. I'm curious,
phenomenal.
Is there some a few suggestions that you're probably making with most all of your patients, like 3 or 4 different things that you find are needle movers, like correcting deficiencies, like zinc deficiency, magnesium? There's just something that you just feel like, I wish the whole world could know, like they just do these 2 or 3 things. Like you talked about meditation, that are just biooptimizers. I know that's a big part of your practice. You're optimizing one's health.
Yeah.
What are those things that you just feel like, especially in this pandemic time, like what could people do? Everybody listening here could be doing every day that would be a game changer in their level of presence and vitality in day-to-day living.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I would say one meditative practice. So I recommend people wake up and meditate first thing and do like an energetic scan of the body, kind of ground the energy, do an energetic scan, see if there's any place in the body that's holding tension or having kind of like a disrupted feeling. Go into that, feel into it, try to ask to be given information about that, learn how to ground energy off. So I think a meditative practice is critical and takes a little training and takes just time and kind of like repeated doing to really kind of become adept at it. And then one of my favorite recommendations for people that I think really moves the needle is going outside in the morning. If you can ideally go outside right when the sun is rising and put your feet on the earth and just allow the photons to come into your eyes, it does so much for your health, because it's not only kind of resetting your circadian rhythm. So the bright light exposure in the morning actually will help you fall asleep, wind down for sleep as the light is waning at night, particularly if you're avoiding a lot of screen time and, exposure to blue light at night. But that allows you to have a healthier sleep-wake cycle and get into the deeper stages of sleep at night. And that's when we heal and repair. And there's just so much good that comes from that, from the standpoint of de-stressing the body, improving the immune system, keeping you more youthful and all of that. But the other cool thing that's happening when you're doing this, you're going out into the bright light in the morning, is it's inducing the mitochondria to produce melatonin. Actually, the mitochondria produce 90% of the melatonin in the body. And this is relatively new science that's talking about this. And the melatonin produced by the mitochondria acts like a potent antioxidant that's protecting the mitochondria from damage. And one of the like the holy grail in medicine really is what can we do to keep our mitochondria healthy? And those are those little energy factories in the body, and they take oxygen from the air we breathe in, glucose from our food, and run them through a series of enzymatic steps to produce ATP, which is the energy of the body. And this is so vital for our health and the maintenance of our physiology. And we age because our mitochondria become dysfunctional. We develop diseases because our mitochondria become dysfunctional. So if there is a practice like this that can protect and your mitochondria, it's vital to do that. And then I would also recommend eating a high life force quotient diet where you're really including a lot of just whole foods and fresh vital greens and vegetables, so that you're getting the electrons in that way, and all of the antioxidants that you need, vitamins and minerals, and then drinking half your body weight in ounces of healthy water. So just clean, structured water. And then you're dealing with some of the basic foundational lifestyle practices.
Yeah. The food piece is so essential for our mitochondria, and it's confusing out there, right? I get a lot of patients coming in with doing every diet you can imagine. There's the keto, the paleo, HCG. There's the medical medium, and doing celery juice. But do you have a sense of, or do you just personalize it for each person? How do you guide people? It sounds like you're just saying eat from Mother Nature, right? But it's so confusing. How would you answer that question and the confusion of people who have tried everything and they're still not feeling well? How do you approach the diet part?
Like you said, I definitely individualize it, because there's no one diet that's right for all people. And there's even no one diet that's right for you at every stage in your life. Usually, if you're a teenager, you're going to need to eat a lot more than, let's say, a menopausal woman. Probably if you're like an athlete compared to a sedentary office worker, you're going to have to be kind of, adjusting the macronutrient ratios and what you're including in your diet. And then also, like, whether you're dealing with a disease or not. Do you have like an autoimmune disease? Do you have like a chronic fatigue type syndrome? Do you have metabolic syndrome where you have high cholesterol and high blood pressure and belly fat accumulation? So obviously all those things are going to really factor in as I'm making recommendations to someone. But I would say, as a rule, as we age, we do need to consume fewer and fewer carbohydrates in order to maintain a healthier body composition, I'd say, as a rule. And in that, I would say the majority of diseases that we have in Western culture is because of overconsumption of carbs and sugar. And then that's leading to insulin resistance and this metabolic syndrome, as I mentioned, which then is a precursor to diabetes and heart disease and cognitive decline and general body inflammation and even your risk for cancer, et cetera.
So I know that one of your areas of specialty is working with Lyme, and you also work with Epstein-Barr virus.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also really, like, there's a lot of layers, right, to kind of get to the root. Do you really feel that people can completely reverse their Lyme disease and Epstein-Barr virus? And very often those are connected, almost, I see anyway. And just for people to have like an understand, like, probably people want a quick fix, but this can be a 6-month, year or 2 years took you a long time to get here, right?
Yes.
That it can take time, and that people look at the journey of getting well and restoring health in your mitochondria it might take time, and take that time, that reflection time, and do that deep inner healing.
Absolutely. It can take a lot of time. I mean, I think that I've learned a lot over the years that can truncate it a little bit, but I got Lyme in 2004, and, it took me a good 8 years to be fully back to normal. I was definitely functional within like a year or so, able to continue to work the whole time and be a mother and all of that. But it was a long journey, and I learned so much along the way. That's allowed me to make it a shorter journey for a lot of people. But yes, I think it is possible to completely reverse it. It just takes concerted effort on all levels. So, diet and lifestyle are huge there. There's so many patients, just absolutely. It's something I hear, I think, every day, where I'll have a patient with, multi-infectious disease, and they say, if I drink alcohol, I feel so much worse the next day, so for example, or if I eat sugar, I feel so much worse the next day. And so when someone has like the multi-infectious disease, I usually put them on, a gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, alcohol-free diet. And to the extent to which they want to follow that, it's really going to it's really going to influence the outcome and how quickly they heal. So there's that. And then, of course, if we can get the hormones balanced and get the sleep wake cycles kind of supported, so they're able to augment their immunity by getting into deeper stages of sleep at night, that really helps. And then oftentimes a person really does need, if they've had a chronic issue with like these multi-infectious disease, they often do need to dive into their kind of personal biography that's encoded in their energetic anatomy and where it lies. And because what I've noticed is that the organisms like the Borrelia bacteria that causes Lyme disease tends to go to areas in the body that are holding something or have been previously injured, or where the energy doesn't flow as well. So a lot of times that's related to postural changes in a person that then has an underpinning of like emotional holding patterns. And just, you can read a lot about a person by just looking at how they hold themselves, whether their shoulders are up, their neck is forward, but are they walking with their head back? Are they walking with their head forward? Are they looking at the ground? Like, how are they holding themselves? And these things are encoded in the body because of, how we've been kind of conditioned to feel about ourselves, or, because of this kind of unexamined, retained energy in the body from previous experiences. So a lot of times someone has to work on that level in order to fully free up the energy, allow the immune system, the circulation to improve, and allow the immune system to get in there and kind of take care of things, in addition to using modalities for treating the organisms.
Yeah. And you're just shedding light on how important it is, like this self-care, even when we're in like a remission or we're feeling good. If we just, and for everyone who's super healthy listening to this, you just want to keep doing like all that Dr. Beth has shared. Like this is a way of life. It's not an event. We don't wait to get sick, although sometimes thank God for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how important it is that we're doing these bio optimization, I want to call them like rituals, right? Like how you start your day too. This is you shared before we even got on started this interview, how you start your morning. This is you are living this. You're sharing your pristine blueprint with us. How you keep it healthy to show up for your patients and your family. And that's so beautiful. Do you have maybe one or two examples, maybe of some of how you've worked with patients that have completely reversed a disease pattern in their body? I'm sure you have many, but maybe just to share with maybe one or two of those.
Sure. Yeah. One person just popped into my mind who came in, and she was in a really, really bad place. She had Lyme disease. She had petroleum toxicity. She had mold exposure. She had imbalanced hormones. And she had, because of all of these things, kind of neuroinflammation. She had like sensory hypersensitivity. She had very strong sensitivity to light, to sound, to stimuli. She came in wearing noise canceling headphones, dark glasses, a hood over her head, kind of like encased in a cape, and just needed to tune the world out, and was in a experiencing just incredible head pain and neck pain and profound fatigue. And so it wasn't an easy journey by any means. And this woman was so dedicated to getting better that she would do whatever it took. And so we did some hormone balancing. We did some oxidative treatments on her. Then we used the PK protocol, which is the kind of the protocol developed by Patricia Kane for flushing toxins that are lodged in the membranes of the body, like the neurons, for example, and then mopping those toxins up. So we did a course of the PK protocol, which is really, really challenging when you have a lot of toxins in the body. Then we would do gut binders before and after, and then send her to colon hydrotherapy. And then the next day she would do a coffee enema, and she would hop in our Hocket device, which is like an infrared ozone sauna. And we were just flushing toxins and flushing toxins and flushing toxins and treating infections at the same time. And then we did so much energy work on her because she had an incredibly traumatic childhood. One of the most traumatic I've learned about over the years. And I've seen so many people with traumatic childhood. So this was, kind of really, really at the foundational root of where a lot of her issues were coming from. I do believe that, she had all these other physical issues, but kind of her propensity to develop these in part was related to this kind of underlying trauma pattern. And so we did a lot of work with the process that I do with people called OCMOS, which is where I'm looking at their energetic balance and seeing if it's balanced or not. And if not, I'm asking, like, what pieces of misinformation in the system are imbalancing the energy. And then I work to draw those out of the system and unwind the compensation the body's had to do around that. So during learning how to do this process called OCMOS taught me so much about this kind of concept of like chaos in the system, like static on the radio, things that are really disrupting the appropriate communication with the blueprint. So we did a lot of like clearing ancestral trauma, clearing previous traumas, clearing signatures of bacteria, signatures of toxins, and then kind of again and again did that. And she was just a warrior, really, of doing her own work as well, really meditating, almost at all times, just kind of staying in meditation because she couldn't work. She couldn't, do much else. And so she, has come all the way through to just this vibrant state. And, we did so much more, it would take forever to tell you, but sending her for 19 channel EEG brain scans and then doing neuromodulation, neural feedback on the brain to kind of calm the brain down. But she's just phenomenal now. She's just thriving. I think she'll become like a really important light out there for other people suffering because she's just such a warrior.
Wow. And how long was this process of working with her?
About 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot to unwind there. A lot.
Wow. It saved her life. I mean, it is. It
She
just
said that. Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, she is going to be a light in the world and really help other people because there's a lot of mysterious illness out there. And I think it's so important to be talking about, this present virus, right? And how often it activates, it connects with inflammation issues that are already in the body. So we're doing with the post-COVID long haulers, and then we're also doing with the vax, people who are having trouble with the vax because it's also going into those problem areas.
Exactly.
It's bringing light to them.
Exactly.
And that can be that's a kind of, we look at the positive that I can't tell you how many people have, after having COVID, they discover something that they didn't know they had in their body. And then, or it's bringing to light something that's already been uncomfortable and it's 10 times worse. So would you mind sharing? I just think it's important that we don't, like, some people are afraid to talk about this in the medical community. And I think it's really important that we talk about it. Because
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I would say now, a lot of my days seeing patients, this is what I'm dealing with, at least like 1 or 2 patients every day are dealing with either the aftermath of having COVID or a bad reaction to the vaccine. And I've almost begun to think of the syndromes related to that as identical, whether it's post-COVID or post-vaccine reaction, they can manifest identically. And it's so unique to the individual and the previous areas of weakness they had, the previous traumas they had. For example, like if someone had previously had a head trauma, maybe they had, multiple concussions or something, then their post-COVID or post-vaccine reaction is going to be in the brain. Or if someone had ulcerative colitis, but it was now in remission, it'll come back. Or if someone had a rheumatological problem and it was in the joints, then now it's going to be flared up again. And no matter where your area of weakness was, you had chronic neck pain. Well, now you have more exaggerated chronic neck pain. Like, doesn't matter where it was. So now you're right. It sheds light on what still needs to be addressed that's underlying. And then both the COVID infection and the vaccine reaction can create so much stress in the body that it causes like a cascade of other issues that to develop that then, kind of cloud the picture. So sometimes people have adrenal fatigue, I would say 90% of the time, like the stress of having like one of those two things will deplete the adrenal cortical hormones, which modulate the immune system and our anti-inflammatory nature. So then if those go down, one thing you can do is support the adrenals again, and that can kind of tone down the symptoms a bit. The other thing I see is that the two things, the COVID, post-COVID and post-vaccine reaction, can cause so much stress that and maybe via, also depleting the adrenals, it allows for reactivation of dormant viruses. So we all have been exposed to Epstein-Barr, HHV6, cytomegalovirus virus, and if we're healthy, we keep them dormant and they don't bother us. But then if we get stressed or our immune system becomes imbalanced, then they will reactivate. And in the case of Epstein-Barr and the other two, you can feel like you have like a low-grade mono type thing, and it can create inflammation in the sites that were previously inflamed. And so sometimes treating those viruses can make a big difference.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that overview. So important. And also, very often a blessing and a challenge, right? For people, and just to do the work. This is, you've been given this opportunity to go deeper in your health and making even better choices, and not to be afraid of this virus. That we all have this immune system that wants to work for us, not against us, right? And so thank you for everything that you've shared. This has been such an illuminating conversation with you, and I really appreciate this work that you're doing in the world, and educating other physicians on the power of the pristine blueprint, and to realize that we're connected to this unified field, and we tap into that, anything is possible, truly. So where can people find out more about you?
Well, they can follow me on social media at Beth McDougall MD, or they can go to my personal website, Beth McDougall MD, or Jizen.com, JYZEN.com. And Jizen has a lot of information about what we're doing here in the realm of biooptimization.
Before we close today, I'm wondering if you have just one more bit of information or wisdom you'd like to share with all of us.
Well, I think one of the purposes I have on the planet really is to give people hope, when they have a medical challenge, because I feel like most everything can be unwound, and a person really has the capacity to heal, and to heal all the way, and it's a journey, it's a process, but it can be done. And I think that so often people don't think it's possible. And so then, of course, if you don't think it's possible, it's not going to happen.
Exactly. Well, thank you again for this conversation, and for helping everyone who's listening to know what's possible, that you matter, and there is that blueprint. Say yes to your pristine blueprint. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining me and Dr. McDougall today.
Thank you, Robyn.